This week on Barbell Shrug, we talk about the one energy system you're probably avoiding and the unknown weaknesses holding you back with Julian Pineau of StrongFit.
As the saying goes, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And sometimes, they'll show up at your front door dragging a heavy sled and chains. To be coachable, to learn, adapt, and break old barriers, you must be willing to get outside your comfort zone, far away from your preferred pace and cozy routines. Start right now with what you cannot do, with what you're afraid to do. Because sometimes, the only way to unveil true weakness and bust plateaus is to pull yourself through dark places. All of your questions, your doubts, and fears, it's time to burn them down and rise again. Renewed, alive, and awakened.
Welcome to Barbell Shrugged. I'm Mike Bledsoe, standing here with Chris Moore, Doug Larson, and we have traveled up to Torrance, California to StrongFit to hang out with Julian Pineau.
Hey guys.
AKA Torture Master.
Yes.
He didn't whoop our asses earlier.
Yeah, it got
all
pretty
of our
serious.
asses.
Check out these hands,
I hadn't
man.
thrown up in a while for no reason other than I was exhausted.
The skin is melted off my fingertip from the heavy sled drag in a
And
parking lot.
how many times did you throw up?
I threw up like 6 or 8 pulls in a row.
I think he said 8 times.
No, I believe he said 8.
I threw up one time, and usually I don't throw up at all.
Ugh.
I usually quit way before I throw up, going, I'm not doing this shit.
You can
But
check
he
my
pushed me through
Instagram.
push me through the limit. We're both laying next to pools for a
I'm
minute there.
actually the first one to throw up, and I didn't throw up at all. It's very, very strange. And I had 3 breakfasts. It doesn't make any sense.
I saw it happen. You did get your ass beat, too.
Oh,
You-
no,
no,
I
you-
got
you
destroyed.
had-
But I just didn't throw up.
You had the shimmy legs hardcore by the end of the sled pool.
Actually,
You're going like this. You're like, oh, shit.
I hadn't been that wobbly in a while.
Oh, no, I haven't gotten to that place. I haven't been there in a while.
And I got to say,
Period.
Julian didn't give a shit. He was loving every second of it.
So do not care. You guys don't understand.
Well, I guess you've seen it once or twice. You know when we're going to fucking die out here. We were
I
just
did
suffering.
warn you beforehand.
Yeah.
That I would take a picture with you lying.
You did say
I
that.
did say that.
And then you must have seen the future because an hour and a half later, I'm laying down in the grass or behind the parking lot, and you were smiling above me. I'm like,
Yes,
I was.
was.
This happened.
But I knew I had time, so I let you give you 5 minutes. You're still on the ground. I said,
There was
you're
no
mine
rush.
now. That's
No
it. You're
rush.
mine. Yeah.
20 minutes later, we're podcasting and shaped the podcast.
That's right.
It was rough, man.
20 minutes or 2 hours, whatever.
Yeah, like 2 hours mostly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this will all, in the end, be a very relevant part of the show because towards the end of the show, we're going to talk about getting athletes all the way to kind of 100% full anaerobic threshold.
Yep.
It's a big part of what you do
Yes,
that
it
you
is.
see CrossFitters not doing. They pace
Not
too
anymore.
much, so
Yes.
kind of a teaser for the end of the show.
Yeah.
Stay tuned.
Yeah, but we showed up to do a show, and we were like, oh, we're going to work out. And a couple people that have trained with you before said, hey, you're probably going to throw up. I'm like,
Well, I thought Charlotte did a good job of like holding in the laughter.
but you were basically pointing out our weaknesses all day.
Yeah,
so
no,
it was like a
but,
big ego hit for all of us. Like, oh, shit.
Well, we were being coachable, Mike.
Yes, you were. Yes, you were. But I love when
As best as
Charlotte,
possible.
Charlotte told me, yeah, they're going to train and then we'll just do the show right away. I was like, maybe just a little break in between, maybe lunch. I mean, you guys might not exactly understand what's going to happen next, but I do, and I'm going to kill you.
We'll rest like an hour and a half, 2 hours maybe.
But I'll also add on to that it was really an awareness-raising experience.
Yes.
Like, there's pain, and that sucks, but the pain came with really big lessons.
Yeah,
absolutely.
and the point was I'll find what you cannot do, and I'll kill you with that.
And you did.
Yeah.
Yes, I did.
How did you get here?
In Torrance?
Yeah, what brought you here doing the thing that you do now?
Well, I'm a movement specialist first, because a lot of people think I'm a strongman first. I do compete in strongman and powerlifting, but it's
an awesome sport.
Yeah, I love the sport, but it's a hobby. I come from MMA first, and then I transitioned to strongman. But I'm a movement specialist first. That's my career. So my thing was always to fix fix athletes. And so I came around the principle that I use in order to find whatever, I need to find an athlete to make them better. So a lot of it was, I come from sports myself. I'm an athlete. So I started with, I've been in sports at a national level since I'm like 9 years old, I think. When I was
national level?
Yeah. When I was 11 years old, I went to the European Cup of soccer for 11-year-olds, basically. Then I was state champion in swimming. There's a story on that one for the guys that know me. I was state champion in swimming, in wrestling. I've done sports my entire life, basically. Yeah. So I moved here when I was like 24, trying to get more into MMA. Moved to Brazil for more jiu-jitsu and everything. So I've been in sports my entire life. So
sport journeyman.
Yeah, completely. Yeah. And my coaching always been my passion, though. Making people better.
Yeah.
I'm a humanist at heart, so I just want to better humankind. So I've always been into sports. There's really nothing else I've ever really done. So I read a lot about other things than sport, but my focus has always been bettering athletes. Stuff like that. So that led me to being a movement specialist, because my talent relies more in identifying faulty patterns. That's really where I'm good at, and so that led me straight to being a movement specialist.
And it seems like your strongman methods you've utilized now allow you to really pursue what you really care about. That is making sure humans are moving the right way, and then building a powerful athlete from there.
Yes, exactly. And what I liked about strongman is the variety of movements that I have, the plans of movements and everything.
Yeah. Just here you have endless ways to torture / improve athletes.
Yeah, that I do. So that was cool. And so at first the idea for me was, I was always believing in principles first. It's Ralph Emerson who said there's a million methods out there, but very few principles. A man who understands the principles can select his own method, whereas a man who follows a method without the principles will run into trouble. So the key for me was to always identify the right principles, and I could build everything on that. And then there was one time I read, it was a business lecture from Charles Munger. People that don't know Charles Munger is Warren Buffett's right-hand man.
Yeah, so the two of them are quite a formidable pair,
yes,
for sure.
And excessively sharp people. And he gave a business lecture called The World of Worldly Wisdom. And he was explaining how they look over there on how to invest in a company versus another. And so he had 24 points of worldly wisdom, and none of them were about finance. None of it was finance related. They were looking at, for example, the principle of critical mass, whether the company was there or not. The what do you call that? You call that the misjudgment of character, things like that. But basically, all the points were relating to life, not finance. And so when I read that, I was like, that is the way to build whatever system that you have.
Yeah,
it's
that's
like
a
this
bigger idea that's bigger than business or fitness or strength.
And if it should work for life. No matter what you do, it should work for everything. If it's a true principle, it works for everything.
Yeah.
And so most of the stuff I got are not necessarily from training per se. They come from physics, math, whatever principle works. But then I will codify them in a way that I can adapt that to training.
I like that, because when you discover continuously from your own domain, like if you're a strength coach reading only strength stuff, you're sort of, I wouldn't say polluted, but it's an echo chamber. Versus going outside, you see, that is something brand new that illuminates what I've been struggling with within my own field.
And when you get stuck in one field, we always end up talking about methods. That's all we talk about.
And dick measuring who's got the better method.
And that's all there is. It's 83 versus 84%. It's West Side versus this. They don't talk about the underlying principles that you have. If you don't understand the principles, you're doomed no matter what, because you have to own training. And that's what I try to do with athletes too, is teach them to own their training. Stop asking me to tell you what to do. No, let me tell you how to do it. Let me explain to you the principles so you understand why I make you do what I make you do. So that way you can own the training, be part of it, and then you don't have to have me next to you all the time. You have to understand why you do what you do. Don't just let people tell you what to do. Own your training. You will never get better otherwise. Become smarter. Become a smarter athlete first.
The ability to think.
Yes, you have to understand your training. And so for me, it was always about the principles. And so I started to have I started to basically put together, like a little bit like Charles Munger did, a list of things that I wanted in order to create the system that I have. And a big one that I found was the idea of critical mass, which is in order to have that explosion, that self-sustaining reaction, you need to have all the components at a certain level. So they don't have to be equal, but they all have to be within a certain percentage of each other, and then you get that tipping point, that reaction where everything is moving forward. And then out of that, you get lesser chance of injuries, you get lesser chance of plateauing, you don't create a glass ceiling. no repetitive use injuries, things like that. So it was very important for me. I thought that was a great principle. Critical mass defined exactly what I wanted to find. I wanted to find that zone where we've been there, where the training is working well, everything is cool. I mean, you're making progress. You can feel, but everything goes up at once, not just my squat or my deadlift or my snatches. Everything goes up slowly but surely, and you're making progress.
You make a good point, because sometimes one thing will spike and other things will pay a price or regress. And I've noticed that usually when that happens, you get a short-term reward, and then something's going to break, and you get a regression.
Yeah. And make up ground. And a lot of time, if you choose one lift versus the other, what you're doing is really neurological adaptation. You're just getting better at that lift, so you're doing more of it. Okay, so now you up the volume, but you lower the intensity. So sooner or later, you're going to break. So you're just choosing one lift, you're going to make it go up for a while, and then it'll go down again because you didn't raise the entire thing. The idea is the wider the base, the higher the pyramid. So instead of spending all your energy trying to get a higher pyramid, once in a while you have to widen the base.
This is why people plateau so hard. They struggle to overcome that, right? They kind of reach the end of how far they can stretch.
Yeah, and then they don't realize they've been going like this for a year and a half now, just trying to get the squat higher. And like, I know, but you still haven't built your glutes. You still haven't been your hammies. There's a moment where the weight is just too much.
Or in this case, your lats just don't work, which is a lesson I learned today.
Exactly, yeah, and then your shoulder starts to hurt, and so it creates other problem. Now you overcompensate, so now you got a problem on the other side, and now you're 4 years later, and then your ankle hurts, and you have no idea why, because it started with your left shoulder.
Yeah.
Which eventually will translate to everything. So now you're down the list, and you're having that recurrent problem in your foot or in your ankle or whatever, and nobody can figure it out.
What kind of athletes are seeking you out, and who are you working with?
I got CrossFitters. I got a lot of them, but I have pro golf players. I got powerlifters. I got movement is movement. I get everybody.
Also, the Los Angeles Clippers? Was that your team?
No, that's my friend's son who was here. He's a recovery expert, and he was working with the Los Angeles Clippers. So he does a lot of what I do, but from the recovery side.
Okay.
And then the ART, the soft tissue, how to, once you're truly injured, like you pop something, it's going to be very hard for me to fix certain things until we can remove the scar tissue, until like if a joint is truly locked, then I'll need some help. I need someone to reset it in the right position just so I can make it work properly. So sometimes I need help from someone like Sun who can open up the tissues and stuff like that.
Yeah, he tortured my right pec.
Yeah.
Guys, he was opening up my tissues, opening them up against
he was not touching
my
your
will.
boobs. He was, exactly.
A bit of a violation, bit of a necessary treatment.
Yes.
So you mentioned your principle of critical mass, and I know you had explained to us earlier how you kind of break that out into three separate categories. Can you dig into those a little bit?
I have three components. So first, movement. I'm a movement specialist. So what is movement? Because it's usually not very defined. A movement is a hold, a carry, or a load. It's going to be that or a combination, any combination of those three. So hold, carry, and load. So if you look at most sports, let's take CrossFit as an example. We just load. It's up and down. That's all we do basically. There's no holding the weight, and there's no carrying it.
Can you give an example of each one of those? Just
yes, for example, like I'm guessing everybody knows what a yoke walk is. Okay, that would be the carry and the hold.
Okay.
So you would not you would load it very little because you just take it basically off the ground, but then you would hold it on your back and carry it. So that would be a great add to just a squat. A squat is a pure load, but if you were to take after squatting session, do a yoke walk, for example, you would hit every muscle possible in your hips because you would have to stabilize your weight on your shoulders, then you would have to go left, right. So the problem with a squat,
great way to build
strengthen
the pelvis
and everything. And the problem with a squat is you can shift. You know, after time, we all shift slightly to the right, slightly to the left. When you walk, you don't have that. You have to go left, you have to go right. So if you shift in any way, I'll see it. Then I'll tell us, ooh, there's a problem there. I mean, but you'll have to go left, right. That's why I carry so much, because you'll have to go one side versus the other.
You mentioned how that load allows you to quickly diagnose what's going on.
Right away. It's like a movement that I love that I talk about all the time is the overhead carry. So I use a yoke because a bar won't do it, because a bar basically you're just going to press up and down. I want the stabilization to happen in a horizontal plane, the frontal plane. So we load a yoke like we did with you guys, just take it up and then start walking. And I know by experience, we have certain numbers that I have in mind, that if you cannot stabilize your snatch for 50 feet, then you just don't have the upper back strength to snatch that weight.
So whatever you can snatch, you should about get that bar overhead and
minimum.
Walk.
And that's really, really, really a minimum. What I want is a clean and jerk weight overhead for 50 feet. But if you cannot do a snatch, I won't even let you snatch at first. That's the bare minimum. If you can, you're not snatching a weight you cannot control overhead for 50 feet. That's just the bottom line.
And you were mentioning to Mike that if you can't do that and you continue to push the snatch, even though you keep making progress, you've lit a bomb for yourself.
Yes, because first of all, you're going to press out everything. You're not stabilizing with arm straight. That means you have to press slightly. So anytime you're going to catch that weight, you're going to press it out ever so slightly, but that means you're transferring the load to the front delt, to the triceps, instead of keeping it in the upper back. And now the cycle is going to go toward the bad side. It's either it's a vicious cycle or a good one, but you're not staying in the middle. It's either good or bad. And so when you start pressing out those snatches, you're going to have to move your elbows. You're going to have to start pressing the weight. It leads to bad things. Bad habits are being formed. And remember, bad technique means the right muscle atrophy. Good technique means hypertrophy of the right muscle. Bad technique means atrophy of the right muscle. So you're either moving well toward the good way or you're moving bad and going worse.
Yeah, that's one thing you said that stuck out. Like, if a bad habit is being practiced, you're only building the bad habit to be strong and dominant. And you're making every rep makes it harder to undo.
Yes, basically. And so you have to. So an easy way for me, for example, to fix the snatch in a way without going through technique is just reinforcing the right muscle. Getting those muscles that you shut off to be stronger again, and then that way it will by itself in a way fixing the technique, because now you'll be able to engage the right muscle the way your coach is asking you to do, but you just cannot do because you can't feel it because those muscles are off already. So I'll turn them back on. I'll make sure you can stabilize the weight correctly, and now you're lifting safely and correctly because you're using the right muscle. Right muscle means right technique. So very important.
So kind of as an example there, so people can wrap their head around that if they're new to the sport or they're just not familiar with that concept. If you go overhead and you're doing it incorrectly, a bad technique, then maybe your upper trap does a little bit extra work. Your upper trap gets much bigger. Your lower trap at the end of the range of motion all the way overhead isn't contracting like it should, and so your lower trap remains small because it's not contracting. If it's not contracting, it's not fatiguing. It's not fatiguing. It's not going to get bigger because there's no stimulus.
Exactly.
So your upper trap gets big, lower trap doesn't get big, and you can see it in someone's back. You can see the lack of development in someone's lower traps because they're going overhead incorrectly.
Exactly. And this is why you see in CrossFit right now with that upper trap syndrome, where everybody has those jacked traps, but if you look from the side, the mid-back is just gone. You can put your finger, there's nothing there. So you start to see a development of athletes, especially toward the women, where they basically have the same imbalances. It's because the movement in CrossFit always follow the same pattern. And that's the second, so past the movement, the second one that I have is the planes of movement. For the critical mass, which is very important. So we got the sagittal up and down, we got the frontal away and toward you, transversal, all the torque and everything, but then left versus right, and then all the problem with the grip. So the problem in CrossFit is everything is up and down. All we take is very little down, and really it's up. So we just take everything up and everything. There's no more in the frontal plane anymore until you get to the CrossFit Games, obviously. But look at regionals, you'll see everything is in the same plane. So what does that mean? That means basically you see the rear delt is just, there's very little development of the rear delt in CrossFit. Look at the women, they have massive shoulders, and yet you go to a delt and he fades away. They have wide lats, but no thickness in the mid-back. There's no lower trap development. There's no hammies and everything. That's because CrossFit does not hit all the planes of movement, and it creates its own deficiencies.
Yeah, you mentioned one of the biggest missing components that no one seems to do is no pulling from the front to the body. It's like a barbell row.
Yeah. Nobody does a barbell row anymore. This was the mainstay of, look at the 70s when they were doing power building and they had massive lifting strong people like Bill Kazmaier, all those guys back then that were really like big bodybuilders, excessively strong bodybuilders. But barbell rows were just a mainstay of any program.
I'm thinking back to strongman and powerlifting and every strength sport. I can't think of anybody I ever looked up to who couldn't row just like people like Ed Cohen and Powell that could barbell row 500 pounds for reps. There was no fucking puzzle why he was deadlifting 900 pounds. The guy can fucking row 500 for 10 or whatever. I mean, good Lord.
And for
even
me,
Ronnie.
Ronnie. You watch Ronnie Coleman. I mean, these are exactly. Go to strongman, weightlifting, powerlifting. Strongman and bodybuilding and powerlifting. These guys had enormously strong backs, and there was no surprise why they could push too. There was no surprise why the squats weren't hurting their backs.
Exactly. And again, I have that number where for me to have a healthy back, you have to be able to do barbell rows with at least 50% of your 1 rep max for your deadlift.
For
6-7 reps, right? 6-7 reps, something like that.
And I don't know how many people can do that.
You were talking earlier.
Yes. So one of the components of the planes of movement, I put the grip into it. Why? Because it's very important. So you have three different hand placements. You have the pronated, so thumbs facing each other, neutral, thumb facing up, supinated, thumbs facing out. In CrossFit, everything is pronated. Olympic weightlifting.
When you started mentioning this to me earlier, I was like, oh, that's very enlightening. I mean, that has crossed my mind, as we don't do a lot of that.
Never.
But what you pointed out was exactly why that's not a good thing.
Yes, and on top of that, you have closed hand and open hand.
Yeah.
Those are different, also kind of grip, and it matters. I'll explain why in a second. So the problem with if you don't work supinated is the ulna and the radius get stuck basically one way. So now you're going to only strengthen in a pronated way. The ulna and the radius are stuck only in one direction.
Those are the bones in your forearm.
Those are bones in your forearm.
Yeah, by the way, if you're just listening, it might be worth going and watching.
Yes.
No.
I just talk about it all the time.
No. Keep showing.
Go to barbellshort.com. Watch the video, folks.
People need to watch the video. That's all I want to encourage here.
And so. The forearm is stuck one way. So what does it do? It does lock your elbow a certain way, and that also locks your shoulder a certain way, which is slightly internally rotated. So everything in CrossFit is thumb toward, we go toward the up toward the down, basically all the time. So that slightly internally rotates the shoulder, and the elbow is always locked this way. So now whenever you face something like, let's say Matt Fraser at the game, where you have to open up supinated, the elbow cannot follow, because it got stuck one way. That means the shoulder cannot follow, cannot open up completely. That means you cannot activate the lat correctly. So now you're going to force your elbow open, which is going to give you elbow pain, eventually shoulder. But on top of that, it will force your bicep to do most of the work. When the bicep does the work, the lat has to disengage, and the biceps obviously is going to tire a lot faster than the lat.
Little chunk of muscle compared to your lat.
Very small. So now you're stuck on a rope climb in a supinated position like at the games here on an open hand, and this is weak, so you're going to ask your bicep to work tremendously hard. When the biceps works too hard, again, you're not engaging the lat properly. Remember, your shoulder is also not in a proper position, so now your lat is not working. So now you're asking the bicep to pull you on that rope, and you're going to give up sooner. And so this is what I see a lot when I see the rope climb, is people come back and their grip is shot. Kenny Leverage didn't make the games because of that, because he did Randy. His grip was tired. He goes to the rope climb. He had nothing left. Otherwise, Kenny would have made the games. But his grip was so shot. He did terrible on the second workout, and that was it.
And just doing more rope climbs may not be the answer.
No, because the problem with rope climbs, and that's something we'll talk about that, is the energy systems is part of the critical mass. When you do rope climb, you get better at it. So you transition your energy system, but you're not hitting all of them. So at first, you can only do one. So now we're in the strength energy system. When you get good, you can do 35. So now it's muscle endurance. So you transition through the energy systems, but you're not hitting all of them.
Yeah.
We have to hit all energy systems all the time.
Yeah.
And so your grip cannot handle certain things. And when you happen to reach that, you're done.
Yeah.
You're just looking at the
when
rope.
your grip goes, you just have to sit down for a while.
$300,000 right there.
Yeah, it's a lesson you won't repeat again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's very important to understand that the grip has to be worked in pronated, neutral, and supinated. If you don't, first of all, it will kill your elbows. And again, it does not being working in supinated does not allow you to work with open shoulders. So we'll create that pronation, which will make you shrug more. So now we go back to that upper trap. So everything feeds. The problem feed into each other. So now you have too much upper trap, not enough mid trap, because your shoulders are rotated. That makes you stronger toward the pronation, but not supination. So they all feed into each other, either good or bad.
Yeah, you had us do the sled pulling drill.
Exactly.
So sled, I don't know how many feet is that?
100
feet.
Yeah.
Long rope. Pretty heavy sled. Like you drag it down backwards, get a little pre-fatigue, you run back down. We did bent over hand pulls to the midline like you would climb a rope, but just pulling. And immediately I noticed my biceps and forearms just becoming so engorged.
Yeah.
Like they felt like they were just going to fucking pop. And then my back, no blood in my lats.
Exactly.
I was like, holy shit.
But your problem is you have a bad right shoulder because of the lat not being activated. So right away, it shows you that in order for me to activate your lat, I'm going to have you also need a stronger grip so that you can let go of the bicep. Yeah. Because if your grip is weak, again, your bicep engages too much, your lat won't. So I need your grip to get better in order to disengage the bicep so I can get the lat to engage.
That's one of the first things we saw in here. You've got two stations. Just like in most high school strength gyms, you'd see a PVC pipe or something over the end of the barbell, over a pipe, and just doing forearm rolls. Like you said, specifically rolling your hand into the supinated position, so strengthening the bottom part of your forearm. Or if you have your palm up, this part of this meat that's never getting trained if you're holding a barbell pronated.
You only go up, basically. That's the thing. And this is not, the strong muscle are not here. All the strong muscle are here. So, especially with CrossFit, we only go up. We just flick the wrist up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Instead of working our way toward toward the elbow.
You mentioned if you can't maintain this position, you cannot pull very strong or effectively. Even if you're a weightlifter, if you have a hook grip and your wrists go flat, you're done. You said.
And in strongman, so what you want is to have the grip like Wolverine, where the knuckles, facing like this. And so whenever you carry, your knuckle should face toward the ground. If you cannot do this, the second you bite your wrist open a little bit, you go putting all your fingers, hands are going to open.
And you were talking earlier about the fingers versus the thumb itself.
Yes.
The thumb is often the limiter in that case. So
yes, it is. The fingers can be quite strong, but that's the problem with open hand grip. When you're here, we can basically, even with a hook grip, your fingers can hold most of it. The grip is doing very little, you're just squeezing it. When you start to open hand, the thumb is going to have to squeeze right here. And those muscles here are much weaker. So the thumb will be the limiting factor. And we go back to climbing a rope. When you're here and the thumb starts to give up, you got nothing. And once those muscles get tired and your hands here is done, that's it. There's no flushing. This activates all those muscles right here. So the fingers are quite strong. This is very small.
Yeah.
And so this is a limiting factor on the pinch grip is always the thumb. So whenever you're like that, whenever you have an open hand strength, it's a pinch grip. The thumb will be the limiting factor. And that is something that is never worked. Pinch grip is not work at all. It's not even, it's just not work.
It's not something that people program in. You got to create an exercise specifically for that.
For pinch grip, yeah. You do. But again, pulling the rope like that, the problem too is now we're going to go toward the third component of the critical mass, which was the energy system. But
is there anything else you want to say about planes of motion?
No, that was about, yes, there was the left versus right. That's also a problem that I think I like strongman for that is we press the dumbbell overhead a lot. And that's very important is I see a lot of CrossFitters that are not even left shoulder versus right shoulder. So I have different exercise that I do, like the Z press with dumbbells that I made you do.
That is a brutal exercise.
I think that's the only test I passed all day.
Yes, you did, actually. But you did.
Everything else, complete failure.
So Adrenus can sit in military press 300 pounds like that. I could barely hold 20 pounds.
Way more.
That proper wrist position.
Way more than that, trust me.
If you're home, you should try that. You just sit on the ground with your feet out in front of you and you do overhead press. We use dumbbells. Probably could use a barbell maybe. But
the back and then the shoulder on top of the hips. You cannot lean back. You cannot, start to go in a hollow position. You have to stay nice and arch. And the key, I like dumbbells is because I can test the left versus the right. And you will be surprised how much one side is weaker than the other.
It feels like you're in no man's land. Like as soon as I was having to roll my elbows forward and create this weird tension just to be able to get in that position. As soon as I went back and I let this I tried to get a good, strong wrist position, I felt all the tension just pop out and I just fell down.
Yeah.
Like, oh, shit.
And it's
like
an
an enlightening
exercise.
moment. Like, wow, I just felt my whole body just shut down when that tension was lost.
And I use that a lot. It's an exercise you guys haven't done today, but I press with a barbell. So I take a barbell in one arm, and I'll just press it, but loading my lats. So it's almost like doing a pull down on the way down and then pressing. Allows me to engage my lat fully to stabilize my shoulder to press against. And that's an exercise where I'll test the left versus the right. And I'll see, especially in CrossFitters, like a 20% difference between the left and the right. Wow. Which is a humongous problem because whenever you jerk, whenever you press now, you're going to favor one side slightly. Remember, it's not just about your shoulder, it's about your back. Now you're going to lean. Right? Yeah, you're going to lean slightly. So now your oblique is working too much. Your lat insertion is working. Now you start to have problem on the lat and you don't understand why. It's because you're slightly uneven. But it's very hard to see until I put a barbell in your left arm and then on your right arm and you see, you can do it on this side, you can't do it on that side.
And then the trap is, I guess, people will then go, oh, I got a problem down here in my back or something.
Exactly.
They start rolling that out. And they keep training and they have to keep fucking trying to roll this up.
And it just keeps coming back. And I'm like, yes, because you can't load the lat. So where do you think you're just going to collapse? And so now they have one upper back that is weaker, so one side that is weaker than the other. So now they go squat. And then the weight of the bar will crush one side and will start leaning slightly toward that side. So now they're going to have to put their hips under. And now they squat crooked. And now they're messing up their hip and then eventually their knee. And they say, I don't know why my knee is so messed up. Well, because your upper back is so uneven, the bar is shifting, and that makes the squat very a dangerous movement for you, basically. Oh, so everything is always linked. It's very important to understand everything is linked. Any exercise that is done improperly somewhere will have a repercussion somewhere else. So you have to fix the base.
So one interesting thing that I've noticed, you've talked about shoulders all day long, and we talked upper trap, lower trap, serratus, lats, pecs, pec minor. We keep talking about all these different muscles that surround the shoulder, but you haven't mentioned rotator cuff one single time. Is that something that you don't tend to think is usually the problem, or where does it fit in this puzzle?
Unless you had like a real injury, like a traumatic injury, like someone popped it. It's like knee issues. Unless you get hit sideways by a car, chances are, if you pop your ACL just doing a lunge, there was something wrong there before. You know what I mean? So it's the same thing with rotator cuff. Eventually, yes, you will have rotator cuff issues, but they're not going to just happen like that. In order to have rotator cuff problem, you did jiu-jitsu and the guy kimura'd you, and his name is Palhares, and then you hold it for too long and pop your shoulder because he's a
Don't let
dick.
a trained MMA champion armbar you.
Exactly, because he's an asshole. Unless you have
Call him out.
Yeah.
You hear that, asshole?
Yeah.
I'm not
Show
angry.
up to StrongFit right now.
It
By
starts.
the time you're here, we'll be gone. You can deal with Julian.
It starts. It starts standing up. We're all good. And so the problem. So unless that, before we get to rotator cuff, there's going to be something else, and you'll have to fix that anyway. So if it's rotator cuff you already have, you're going to have to go through PT. We're going to have to. But no matter what, I'm going to need your lats to be even stronger now because your rotator cuff cannot hold it. I'm going to need the rear delt to be even stronger now. The trap to be fully developed. No matter what, you're going to have those things. I mean, rotator cuff is a very specific thing, and usually doesn't come around just like that. It's a long way in the making. I mean, and no matter what, whether you come to see me before or after surgery, you're gonna have to do the same stuff. So that's why, guys, come see me before surgery.
I recommend it.
Let's take a break real quick. When we come back, we're going to talk about the third component,
Yes.
and which is energy system.
Energy system.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Welcome back to Technique WOD. Today we're talking about strengthening your rotator cuff so you can prevent injuries and be way stronger overhead. So a common pattern that we see with especially new people when they get into lifting weights is that they do a whole lot of pressing and they don't do as much pulling. So I might do a lot of push-ups, a lot of bench press, maybe even some overhead work, standing barbell presses, dumbbell presses, kettlebell presses, and I don't match my pressing with equal amounts of pulling. I don't do as many ring rows, strict pull-ups, barbell rows in equal proportions to the amount of pressing that I do. I want to match 1-to-1 usually pressing and pulling, and that's not a very common thing to see amongst beginners until you get more experience and you start to learn more about the pulling exercises, which certainly aren't as popular. You know, bench press is talked about much more than barbell bent over rows. So because the popularity of bench press is way higher than barbell bent over rows, people will do way more bench presses and not as many barbell bent rows. And so what happens is you get some type of an imbalance. Your pressing muscles get strong, your pulling muscles, they're way behind, and it takes a long time to get those pulling muscles to catch up. So that's a very common thing. If you've been training in a CrossFit gym or you have some amount of strength and conditioning experience, you probably already know to get that roughly, that 1-to-1 ratio between pressing and pulling. If you did pressing for a long time and now you're just learning about pulling and you're just trying to catch up your pulling volume to your old pressing volume, then maybe you do twice as much pulling right now as you do pressing. You have a 2-to-1 ratio of pulling to pressing, just so you can catch up and get some amount of balance back in your body. So that's a very common thing. Another really common thing is that with pressing and pulling, since your pec is a shoulder internal rotator and your lats, your big back muscles, are also internal rotators, often doing a lot of pressing and pulling with the two examples I just used, with bench press and with barbell bent rows, those are both internal rotation based activities, since I'm using primarily at the shoulder here, my pecs and my lats. So because I do a lot of internal rotation, I rarely match, or you probably don't have to do 1-to-1, but you should do some amount of supplementary external rotation work. That way your rotator cuff can stay nice and strong. So if you don't know what a rotator cuff is, I'm going to have Mike come out here for a second. This is Mike Knowlton, he's one of our coaches here at Faction. If he faces this way, basically what your rotator cuff is a series of 4 different muscles that float on your scapula and go out to your shoulder, or rather to your upper arm, your humerus. So if my shoulder blades are here, just so you can get a picture of this, if Mike raises his arms up overhead, my shoulder blades kind of float up like that, and then when he goes back down to normal, they float back down together. If he rolls his shoulders forward, they'll float out to the side. If he brings them together, they'll come out like that, okay? So if I use this hand on his right scapula here, your rotator cuff, again, is 4 different muscles. There's 2 muscles, one here and one right below it. This is your infraspinatus and this is your teres minor. And they basically wrap over the shoulder like this. So when these muscles contract, they're going to contract this way. And as they contract this way, they're going to pull him into external rotation. As they relax, he's going to kind of go back down the other way. Okay?
So those are your rotator cuffs, external rotator muscles. Those ones are often left a little bit weak for a lot of people that don't train to actually make them stronger. They kind of neglect them, and then they get weaker over time in comparison to all the other muscles that are internal rotation based. Okay? So those are going to be the muscles we focus on today, those muscles that are kind of right here that wrap around the shoulder. Okay? Just to round out this big picture of your rotator cuff, there's another muscle that runs right here that kind of goes right over the top. And so when it contracts and it shortens here, if he just relaxes, when this shortens, it kind of raises his arm up just like this. And then finally the last one, if my rotator cuff, or my scapula rather, is here, it's on the underside. And then what it does is it sneaks from the underside here and it wraps under like this. And so when it contracts, it pulls down like that and it internally rotates Mike's arm in this case. So if I have a shoulder blade right here, I have muscles on top and muscles on bottom, and really what they're doing, we come around this side, really what they're doing is some are sneaking around underneath like this, and some are sneaking over the top like that, and then you can see those muscles are hugging the top of his humerus, and it's basically, I'm gonna hug you, it's basically pulling the top of his arm into his shoulder like this. That way his upper arm, or his whole arm rather, doesn't fall off of his shoulder blade. Because if it has this very small socket where the head of his humerus is sitting right there and it rotates around in that socket like that, it can easily just kind of slip off, right? Because it's not wrapped around. There's no bone wrapped over this bone like in your hip. Like your hip's like this, where like there's bone over your leg bone. But your shoulder's not like that at all. It's like a golf ball on a golf tee. Okay, it's not really in there. It's muscles and ligaments and your joint capsule and tendons that are holding it on there, and it easily can slip off if your rotator cuff isn't actively pulling and keeping it on your shoulder blade. Okay, so that's kind of what your shoulder blade looks like. So again, for the rest of this technique WOD, we're going to show you exercises to make these two muscles right on top that wrap over the top here that help pull you into external rotation. We're going to make those muscles stronger. That way you have more bounce for your rotator cuff. All right, so here's a few exercises you can do, either doing your warm-up or probably at the end of your workouts. For the most part, you're not going to go to failure. You're just trying to get those muscles to activate, so to speak, and to get a little bit stronger, but fatiguing them 100% all the way to failure generally is not that good of an idea, because it's going to help you, or not help you, but rather cause you to lose some amount of stability in your shoulder. So maybe if you're about to take a couple days off, you can go to failure, but for the most part, especially if you're going to work out another time that day, if you're doing doubles or if you're going to some type of sports practice or whatnot, you don't want to have a totally 100% fatigued rotator cuff, because it's going to make your shoulder unstable and it's going to make you more likely to get injured. So if you're going to go to failure, you need a big window of rest on the order of at least 24 hours, preferably more, maybe up to 48 hours if you're going to go all the way to failure. So for the most part, the exercises look like this. They're all face pull based. So a face pull is anytime you pull something towards your face like that. So if you have cool crossover symmetry bands, which are getting more popular now, you can just get some tension. Generally, we put them a little bit low, waist height or knee height, and then you're basically pulling right up towards your face. Okay? Almost like you're going to this like bodybuilder double biceps position like this. So I'm not just pulling my elbows back like this because I'm internally rotated right now. This is externally rotated. This is internally rotated. So I'm not just pulling here, although there is one type of face pull. I want to make sure I pull my shoulder blades together and then I externally rotate, which means my hands go back as far as I can get them. Okay? So I'm pulling here. Again, I'm not here. I'm up like this. My elbows aren't way behind me where I'm like this. My elbows, my hands are right around the same, in the same plane, so to speak. So an easy way to see where that's going to be. So you put your hands out just like this, and you bring your hands in where you're basically touching your fingers to your ears. That's where you're going to be. If you can't touch your ears, then you're not externally rotated all the way. Okay? So it's an easy way to think about that. And there's many different variations you can do with the crossover symmetry bands. I'm not going to go over all of them though. This is the general idea. If you don't have crossover symmetry bands, what I like to do is just take take 2 bands, just tie one on totally normal, and then grab the other one and put it in there. Usually I kind of just shake it to get it even. And then what I do is I put my thumb in like this, put my thumbs in like that, and then I grab around like this, and then same thing. I step back, shoulders together, hands come all the way back to my ears, and then I'm pulling like this. Okay. If you don't have any bands at all and you want to use small plates, you can just grab a 2.5 or a 5-pound plate, and then basically you're just going to bend over, nice straight back, shoulders back, neutral spine, same thing. I'm just going to pull the plates up to my ears just like this. Okay. And again, there's a million different variations with each one of those things that you potentially could do. For this video, I'm going to keep it as simple as possible and just show you those 3. But a quick caveat before we end. So we're trying with these movements to work on pulling, scapular retraction, and then also with external rotation in that face pull position. So that kind of kills 2 birds with 1 stone. It helps with your pulling strength and your scapular stability strength, and it also helps with your rotator cuff external rotation strength. So overall, it's going to help make your shoulders healthier. You're going to be less likely to get injured. You're going to be stronger overhead, or just stronger with your upper body in general, especially being on the rings in an unstable environment. Having a stronger rotator cuff makes you much more stable. So when you're on the rings, you're less shaky and you're very solid on the rings. Okay? That being said, your rotator cuff is not the only thing to consider if you have some type of shoulder injury or if you're trying to get your shoulder stronger. For the most part, if we go from kind of core to periphery, starting with our spine, we always want to have, instead of a rounded over upper back, we want to get more thoracic extension by doing extensions over a foam roller or over a barbell, some type of thoracic extension. And then from there, we want to work on having stable shoulder blades. That way, when I reach overhead, my shoulder blades upwardly rotate all the way. Usually the limiter with that is lower trap strength. Go Google that. Go Google lower trap activation exercises or lower trap strength or scapular stability strength. And you can see exercises on that. Maybe we'll do some technique wads on that in the future. And then on top of that, you want to make sure that you have adequate mobility at your actual shoulder joint. Do you have all the shoulder flexion you need overhead? Do you have full external rotation? Do you have full internal rotation? Can you reach up? Can you reach up and touch your opposite shoulder blade? Things like that. So there's all kinds of assessments for getting or having and testing to see if you have enough mobility in your shoulders and the whole rest of your body. Certainly we have maximum mobility, which is designed to do that exact thing. So if you want to test your mobility, you're welcome to look into maximum mobility. But the whole point of this conversation right now is that working your rotator cuff and making your rotator cuff stronger, it is important, but it's only a small piece of the big picture. So if you have a hurt shoulder, you definitely should incorporate some type of face pull or external rotation based strengthening exercise routine into your workouts, into your warm-ups, and maybe into your post workout or your end of the workout. The little stuff you do just to kind of keep good maintenance on little things. Where you're done with your squats, you're done with your Metcon, you do some external rotation work, if you want to do some abs or something, you do some abs or something. It's like the little stuff you do at the end. It's a small piece of the big picture. So incorporate this stuff into your warm-ups, but if you already have a shoulder injury, then be sure to get that checked out and find out if there's any other deeper underlying problems that are more important than just fixing your rotator cuff. So if you want more videos like this one, you can go to barbellshrug.com. Click on Technique Wad. If you go to the Episodes tab at the top of the page, there'll be Technique Wad in the drop-down menu. Click on that. All the episodes are in the library. If you want us to do a cool Technique Wad on something that we haven't done one yet, click on Ask a Question, which is in the top right corner of the website. And there, one of those questions is what technique wads would you like to see in the future? And if we like what you have to say, then maybe we can do a Technique Wad on exactly what you want in the future. I'll see you another day.
And we're back with Julian from StrongFit. Talking about critical mass.
And not just this kind. Whoa! Yeah. Actually, I need to work on this critical mass.
Yeah,
my last don't quite
yeah.
work. Sorry about that, Julian. I apologize.
So we
Apologize for my mid back.
we all felt bad.
Yeah.
We've all felt bad so far today.
Humble pie session earlier.
We've got 3 components. We covered the first 2 in
so
the first half.
The first one is what is a movement. So the carry, the load, and the hold. The second place were all the planes of motion, including the grip, because of how it affects the elbows and the shoulders. And then the third one is energy systems. So you got the basic one, strength, endurance, muscle endurance. But there's one basically that CrossFit started with, which is the anaerobic threshold, and that is gone out of the window.
You missed the one that hooked us all.
Yes, exactly. Actually,
Time spent at the pain cave.
That's very, very
it's
true.
exactly that.
Like I was weightlifting. I discovered CrossFit. I did Fran and some other things.
Exactly.
I was like, "Fuck, this is really
This
difficult and fun."
But why can I not do this?
Right.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
that
Why
time.
did it take me 45 minutes to
Because
do this workout?
you ask yourself some questions after that first experience.
Yeah.
Like, I thought I was strong.
I thought I was strong.
fit.
Yeah, it's like because you read, you go like, thrusters and pull-ups all day long. And, okay, but that took me 16 minutes.
Or you cleaned your 300 pounds and you think you're there.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
People that come in that are already kind of strong, they're the people that can really like burn themselves down metabolically that first day in CrossFit gym. Like they Metcon for the first time, they go really, really, really fast on the first half, and then they just fucking crash and burn.
I remember Grace.
Go, I thought I was in
the
shape.
first time you've done Grace, it's like, this is awesome. You start with 10, you go easy. You get to 17, you go, yeah. You get to 20, you go, oh, shit. Then you go to 25, you go, this is really heavy. And then the last 5, you just die. Right. And that was awesome. I was like pumped everywhere for 10 minutes. I was like, yeah.
Right.
And
after you get off the ground, you say that.
Yeah, fast forward that, and now everybody's so good at pacing. It's you don't go there anymore. Now it's a sport. CrossFit was a training system, and it's turned into a sport. So everybody knows more or less the weight they're gonna do, more or less the movements. They're not that, unless at the CrossFit game they're fairly easy for regionals. You know more or less what you're gonna see, and so everybody knows how to pace. They know their rep scheme. They know when to stop, and so
they're trying to game it to get their placing high, which is fine.
That's the point. It's a sport. You're supposed to get. To strategize it so you win. But the biggest problem with that is the anaerobic threshold has gone completely out of the window. And a very good example was the last open workout, which were the thrusters and the rowing, where you could not stop. The good ones anyway. Would never stop. And you saw Matt Fraser and Rich Froning die on that one. Rich Froning was collapsing after, and so was Matt Fraser. And you say, okay, I'm done for the day. I'm not going to redo that workout, and I'm not going to train today. I was like, that's awesome. They went into that pain cave, they went into an anaerobic threshold. But imagine if they had to have another workout 2 hours later. I don't know that their legs would have accepted that. I mean, so it's a very important energy system, the anaerobic threshold, and we don't go there anymore. And so whenever I have my CrossFit athletes coming here, the first thing I do is put them back in acquaintance with that pain. And usually I like to use low scale movements like the prowler, because that way...
Oh, man, God.
Yeah.
The perfect torture device.
It is, because I know the skill is not what's going to make you stop. Whereas you're going to
You mentioned that earlier, that the problem with skill movements is that you will be limited by what you can do before you stop being able to do it.
Before you get that moment. And I try to take the eccentric out also, because you'll spend too much energy on the eccentric, and you won't get that really ridiculous contraction of the muscle. So the prowler is a perfect tool for that.
So all you do is push. You don't have to lengthen under load.
Exactly. And so because there's no eccentric, you won't get sore the next day, so we can do it often. And it limits the chance of injury because you're not going against the joint. So the only time you stop is when you pussy out.
So anaerobic threshold training is when you go to true fatigue.
True fatigue, like you pump so much lactic acid. You pump so much lactic acid, you're gonna have to puke to eject it. Your body's going basically acidic.
We learned that this morning.
Yeah, your body's.
Doug and I were puke buddies, man.
Yeah,
you ate
like
more
that.
than me, though.
I did.
How many breakfasts did you eat?
Two.
Okay, I had one. Mike had 3, and he didn't puke.
So what does that tell you?
I don't know.
That you wussed out.
The more breakfast you eat, the less likely you are to puke.
Either that or you're a sandbagging son of a bitch.
Yeah, exactly. That's really what it means.
I tore my shoes apart. What are you talking about?
Well, your shoes aren't as tough.
Blame the shoes. Yeah. And so, it's the capacity to flush lactic acid. And it's an energy system that needs to be trained, because they all think you can push through the pain, which is true to a degree, but your body has to learn to recover from that, to flush lactic acid faster so you can recover. And it also allows you to be more efficient and everything. And for a strength athlete, I call that getting in shape. Because if you want to be a true strength athlete, you have to have that energy system. It's a very important one. It's strength shape. Basically, whatever.
So like the medley in a strongman competition would be a great example of that, because it's probably, depending on the competition, 30 seconds to a minute long with like 100% exertion, all heavy strength endurance type events done for a long period of time.
And then remember, an hour later you're gonna have to go max deadlift.
Woo!
Yeah, so that's the thing. That's why it's for. It's for the capacity to push, and also the mental training, so you can get used to pain and learn to push and all that. But it's also that you learn to flush the lactic acid fast enough that an hour and a half later, you're ready to go do another type of training hard again. I mean, if you don't go there, it has to be trained. You're just not.
It's just like the grip. If you don't train it a certain way, it just won't be there when you need it.
It won't be there. And actually do even anaerobic threshold for the grip, which is, I think, for CrossFitter, something that is excessively necessary for example, the rope climb. And when you have one more rope climb, we've seen it at the games, you have one more, and now what? And if you, unfortunately, you reach that stage where you reach that moment where there's just too much lactic acid, that's it.
Yeah,
that's it.
Was the pipe turn your favorite way to train the grip?
The rope pull is great.
The rope pull,
and then that also, the pipe thing. But like, for example, you reach anaerobic threshold on the rope pull, and you couldn't pull anymore.
Yeah,
and now you have to.
Mike got a little squirrely. Like you start seeing some strange maneuvers trying to get around those arms,
like humping the rope. Let me hump it.
The funny thing was, you see how fucking wide his feet got.
I know, he was like this, and
like his feet are looking for some solution.
You just got tons of endurance in that position.
Exactly. I was like, I'm not sure that's the way I teach it.
Like, it hurts so much.
I have my rope here, and
you just gotta let you know.
My daughter, my 10-year-old daughter in the other room, can you stop doing this?
He doesn't have much endurance with that diameter.
Yeah, exactly.
He's not used to anything. His thumb's just not accustomed to thick things.
He's used to hook grip.
So principle-wise, you're suggesting that more CrossFit athletes need to say once a week at least do something that's true anaerobic threshold.
True anaerobic, and honestly, the Metcon won't do it. You just grab a prowler. So you have different ways of doing it.
What are some of the methods?
Yeah, the one I like a lot that you guys couldn't, you pussy it out before. I actually would make you do it.
We're not in shape. Coach, we gotta come back.
Yeah,
we'll work on our shit and come back to you. And you can torture some more.
I put somewhat lightweight. I just take one of the small prowlers. I put a plate on it, and then you'll go around the parking lot twice. But non-stop. You cannot walk. It has to be a sprint. It doesn't have to be front sprint, but you have to go twice. And the second turn is when now your legs are really tired, especially with all the shit we've done before. You're pumping lactic acid. The second turn is when you're going to want to quit. You're going to want to stop. Your legs are not going to move anymore. And that's when I'm going to be behind you with a stick hitting you to make sure that you don't stop running. Even if you move like 1 inch at a time, I don't care, but you're going to move your feet until you make it back. And that's where you're going to truly see how much you want it, how much you can push, and what it feels like to pump so much lactic acid you're going to pass out. But that will be mental training, anaerobic threshold, and the capacity to flush lactic acid.
So that's the kind of experience that makes competition seem a whole lot easier once you get to it.
Yeah, that was the difference with today's training compared to what I normally do on my own, is that if I push the prowler, I push it until I get really, really tired. I slow down. And then once I would have to be walking with the prowler, I'd be like, well, my set's kind of over, and I would wait to do it again. I wouldn't say I have another 50 feet and kind of just like half walk the whole way until I'm just fucking stupid wobbly drunk.
Zombie march.
Yeah. That's the first thing I made Val Vorol do when she came to me, because when we started training, I saw she was lacking some strength and everything, but to me, she just wasn't in shape strength-wise. So I was like, first thing I'm going to do is because you're a gymnast, you move excessively well, and she's a master at pacing. So I was like, okay, then we're not going to pace. I'm going to make you do the prowler until you can move your feet. Yeah, that's easy. Let's try that. And then she could, I remember the first time she went 1.5 and wanted to stop. And I was like, no, you're not. Because that's what you do. The second he gets there, you stop, you take your breath, and then you finish. But that's exactly what I don't want. I want you to go past the moment where you're thinking there's one more round, I need to strategize, I need to pace this. There's no other round here. You just make it 100 feet. You start here, until you're at that lane, there's nothing else. It's you and the weight for 30 seconds. But I love this because in a way I'm free. Because it's just me and the weight, there's nothing else, there's no gym, there's no mortgage, there's nothing. It's just me and the weight for 30 seconds, and I'm going to go to that line. And I can see it. I don't have to count. I can see the line is there. Just make it there. And then your mind becomes so focused, so linear onto making it there. That's the only thing that exists. Forget the pain. Fuck the pain. Just went through it. Move your feet. Take that weight. Move it there. There's nothing else. There's no excuse. You can do this. If you're strong enough, just there. Just give me 3 more steps, but finish. And so I love that because there's that mental intensity that you need to push on that last round and everything. That has to be trained. So I want people to go there. And
that seems like a cleansing exercise
for me,
for the human soul.
For me, it's
really
really
become a better person on the other end of the pool.
That's why I do it. That's the only reason I did 1,000 pounds on the yoke for 50 feet, 40 feet.
You did 1,000 pound yoke?
Yeah,
Damn.
1,015, which at the time was almost double my back squat. But because there was the weight, there was me, and I was going to go there, and there was nothing else. I was going to go there. That's it. There was no other thing that me going there. I've literally felt my femur bending.
I believe it.
Weirdest. That is the strangest experience ever.
1,000 pounds on one foot is
I was
enough.
walking like this and literally feeling my legs, my femur bending. That's a weird experience. Let me put it this way. I was like, man, but at no
Luckily your femur's
moment,
pretty tough.
I was like, I don't care. I'm going there. It was just a yoke on me, but we're going there. There's nothing. So you need that mental focus also because strategizing and pacing is everything for sure. But you're going to need that also because of the mental toughness. And so with Val, I worked really, really hard on that. I made her cry. I mean, she still cries once a week anyway. But I was like, you're going to finish. I don't care. I don't give a shit. So she knows me. She knows I love her. So but I'm going to make you finish because you need to go there mentally. You have to stop. You know, okay, I have 2 more reps, let me take a break and everything.
It's very important. Making ideas remind me of that quote by Mike Tyson popped in my head. Everybody has a plan until you get punched right in the fucking face.
Exactly.
And then what do you do? So you have a strategy and a tough workout, tough competition, and then the pain sets in, and you look over, and people who are following other strategies are doing better. Now what do? Are you going to push hard through this pain or what?
But for me, it's like at the games, for example. You say like David Stotter, like the one I won, she carried, like those 2 kettlebells, she picked them up, carried them, squat, carry, squat, carry. She didn't stop until the end because she wins this, she wins the games. So she looked at the line and she never stopped 1 second. Had Matt Frazier done that, he would have won the games. So looking at him not being able to handle the kettlebell, I'm sure because of a grip issue, because he's strong enough, but not being able to push right there, I was like, that's why you do 1,000 pound yoke for 40 feet. So that's where you need that single-minded focus where you're like, in order to win, I need to do that. But it has to be trained. It just doesn't come around like that. But you have to train that. Where I don't care what. There's always excuses. Your brain is telling you can't do it. Your muscles are telling you can't do it. Your femur are telling you can't do it. But you have to be able to go mentally to that place where I'm going to go there. There is nothing that will stop me from going there. And that's anaerobic threshold because that's getting used to the pain and all that stuff. And outside of the pain, you're always like, yeah, I can do this, I'm good. But once you're in the middle of that freaking thing, with the thing strapped on your back and you got the guy in the back.
It's easy to say shit before that workout
starts. And slapping you on the ass saying, come on, 10 more feet. That's where training is for me.
And kind of putting the divide between training and competition and then knowing what's appropriate when. You're not saying that you need to push anaerobic threshold every single time you jump in the gym.
Once a week.
But once a week.
Yeah. So I think you're saying is that you need just a dose. You need an effective dose, like back to your critical
mass.
It wasn't that every variable had to be peaked to its potential. Because everybody in CrossFit gyms tries to maximize everything.
Yeah, and not everything has to be at the same level. I'm not saying that you have to be as endurant as you are strong or anything. I'm just saying everything has to be within a certain level of each other. So you have to have some anaerobic threshold training.
Yeah, so in case these lats, you don't have to build Dorian Yates lats with 500-pound rows. Well, that's fucking bitching.
I wouldn't mind. I would take some of it.
But
I would love to have that.
But a warm-up set and one heavy set to activate your back once a week may be enough to correct the lat issue, and all of a sudden your shoulder doesn't hurt.
And again, this will take 12 weeks.
Yeah.
And I'm fine with that. That's the thing, too, is people want to do 5 sets because they want it done by tomorrow. They want, I'm going to have lats next week. No, you won't. You spend the last 4 years neglecting them. You're not going to get them tomorrow. But 12 weeks from now, by doing one max set, then you'll go from, you go up 10%. There'll be some activation. You'll be a little bit better. And over the course of the next 6 months, we'll fix it. And now you're at your 50%. Now we're going to work to 60%. And now everything is engaging. And now we got critical mass. And then my job, really, as a coach, is not to overdo and to correct every little thing. Is to get you to critical mass. Let your body, stay in there for an extended period of time, and good things will happen. And then from there, we see what comes off. Like after 4 weeks, there'll be one exercise where you just didn't make progress. Okay, so now we have a problem there. So now we need to fix that and stuff like that. But my job really is to bring you back into that concept of critical mass so I can have a good, strong base for you as an athlete, and then you take it to your sport and you become better.
We've been talking about one energy system or training one aspect, which is the anaerobic threshold.
Yep.
Do you work with the other energy systems, or is this like you found this gap?
No.
And this is kind of like where you specialize? And
I work also with strength and strength endurance, because athletes come to me also to get stronger, and they need a correction on the squat, the deadlift, or stuff like that. So I need to make them. Usually they come to me because of a problem. They got hurt. They're about to get hurt, or they hit a glass ceiling. So it means something somewhere is not strong enough. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to have to go strength endurance, and anaerobic threshold. So I'll work on those three. Pure endurance and everything, there's some great guys that are doing that. I don't need to go there. That's not my specialty. But my specialty, fixing a problem. Something somewhere is not strong enough, and that's why you're having issues. So and I'm not saying big enough. I'm saying strong enough, not activated. So I'll have to go in there and find out the group of muscle or the muscle that is being left out, make that one stronger.
You teach the athlete how to feel what that means when it's working.
First, I'm going to activate it, strength endurance, strength, anaerobic threshold, and now I can put it back in the wild, basically. So you bring me like the hurt animals, I fix them and I can put them back in the wild.
That's a good analogy for it.
Yeah.
Well, what's an example of activating a muscle? What does that mean for someone who isn't familiar with that term?
So for example, biggest problem I see in CrossFit, it's the lack of hammies. Mm-hmm. Like you look on the women's side, hamstrings just not there. They're just flat. Huge quads, nice ass, no hammies. So
nothing bad about that nice ass part, but
yeah, I married a Brazilian woman. So, so the problem with hammies, for example, when I got Val, she had no hammies. When she got married to her husband Steven, she had huge hammies, started CrossFit, and they atrophied completely. It comes from the fact that in order to go fast on barbell movements, usually you have to disengage your hammies, otherwise you would tear. The biggest problem with not having hamstring, basically, is the hamstring is a stabilizing muscle. That's really what this is. It allows the glute to connect toward the foot, through the calf, and to stabilize the movements and everything. So when you don't have hammies, the biggest problem is the foot works too much. So that leads to ankle issues, and that leads to weakening of the Achilles tendon, which leads to popping when you do box jumps. So
this is a huge issue to understand
in
effectively.
CrossFit. Yeah, they all think it's box jumps. No, the box jumps is how it happens. It's not why it happens. The box jump makes it worse, but the biggest problem is the lack of stabilization because of the lack of hamstring. And so how do you create hamstring? Going at the gym and doing lying leg curls is not going to do it, because, again, the point is not to flex the hammy. The point is to make it work as a stabilizing muscle. So it is not the same. So doing lying leg curls might give you huge hammies, but that's not what I want them to do. I don't want them to flex. I want them to stabilize. It's a little bit of a different work. So I need them to be long, to have a correct range of motion under tension. And that's a very important part, because right now we're all going crazy on Kelly Starrett stuff. Thank God he's there, by the way. But all of it is mobility, but not under tension. It's just pure mobility. That's easy. The problem is a weak muscle is a short muscle. So if you elongate a weak muscle and don't let it elongate through strength, but just through stretching, you're making it worse. It's like an elastic band. Now you make it looser, not stronger. That's even worse. So what we need to make it strong, but within the range of motion. So I have specific exercises for that, so I can make the hammy strong in the correct length of motion and making it fire as a stabilizing muscle correctly. So it's a very specific area that I have very specific exercise for.
Yeah, you had us all do the one-legged RDL drill with just the empty barbell.
Exactly.
I think we all suffered. I'm the worst offender here. From
worse.
He's worse.
Yeah.
Mike, you were worse. Stiff, short hamstrings, it seems.
Yes. Well, honestly, I have very few people that can go below the knee with the bar. I think, going back to Val, she must be the only one I got, because everybody else is super short. And the problem with that is when you're short like this, it means your spine will have to take over. The second the barbell goes past the knees, that means you'll have to bend at the spine in order to go lower. That means in order to come off that position, you have to flex the erectors. It's not really their job to flex like this. They're just there to stabilize the spine, and you're supposed to pivot at the hip.
So basically, you're on an RDL exercise, doing a good morning. Any quivering or flexing or motion at all in the spine, even early on, is not appropriate.
No, it's not, because now you're teaching your lower back to take over and the erectors to flex instead of pivoting at the hip. So it's a one-joint rule. You're supposed to pivot at the hip, not activate your erectors all the time. The erectors are not movers like that. They're stabilizers in a way. They're supposed to be two rod, excessively strong, and then you pivot at the hip. They're not supposed to move like that. They're just stabilizers. And now everybody's using them as an active muscle, but it's a little bit like the hammies. That's not really their job. And so that creates a vast amount of problem. And you see most people in CrossFit, when they set up for the snatch or anything, starting by flexing the erectors, and then going into position because their hammies are so short they don't really have a choice. But that teaches a terrible habit. And that's when you start to see the shark fins on a lot of CrossFitters when they lean over, when they have those massively developed
those are two
back.
pythons and two port tenderloins running up their spine.
That goes into nothing.
Yeah, the middle of the back,
the middle of the back is nothing for lack of rowing, but the python are coming because that's where they flex for every single movement, and that's really not what it's there for.
So that's a counterintuitive thing to say for someone who doesn't really know much about this world, that you would have bigger muscles back here in your low back, and that would be a bad thing. You would think bigger muscles would be a good thing. That would be the intuitive thing to think. But if they're truly acting as stabilizers and they're contracting isometrically where they're not actively lengthening, then they're probably not going to grow the same way that if they're actively lengthening under load.
The problem is they're not balanced with the mid-back or the trap or anything. I'm sure.
It's okay for it to be big as long as everything else is big.
Look at Dorian Yates. We go back to him. His lower back was that thick, but so was everything else. So he was fine. The biggest problem is you see lower back that are that thick going into mid-back that is that thick. So the body naturally will go toward the lower back more because that's the only thing that can sustain the huge-ass weight that you're lifting. And so now you're compounding a bad issue. So either you're fitting either you're fixing your problem or you're fitting it. But it's one or the other.
So that ties back into the examples you gave earlier about people not having a strong mid back, not doing enough rows, etc.
And everything. And so it all fits one way or another. Either you're fitting it or you're fixing it, but it's one or the other. I mean, so you have again, it's about critical mass is about balance. That's what this is. You have to put everything within certain components. And an overdeveloped lower back tells me there are other issues that are underdeveloped. And that's why the lower back is overdeveloped. So I don't mind a very thick lower back as long as it goes with a very thick mid back, thick traps, thick everything, thick obliques and everything, like a strongman. Then it's all good. Like that guy over there, his back is strong all the way up. So I don't mind that. But the problem is you'll see a guy with lower back like this going into nothing. So that just spells doom for your
like
spine.
you said, when you see hypertrophy that seems odd compared to everything else, or hypertrophy in itself, not necessarily a good thing.
No, because it can lead to your body, especially when you go toward high performance. A bodybuilder is one thing, but now you're going to a CrossFitter where you know they're going to push everything to the limit. And so they're going to have to go toward that lower back, and then you're going to create more and more and more problem. Again, I'd see mostly athletes, so performance is the first thing. And something overdeveloped somewhere is telling me you cannot perform at your max because it leads to a problem somewhere. It shouldn't be there. The body doesn't do that. The body is an homeostasis system, where everything is controlled under certain limits and everything. If you have a massive lower back, you're forcing it that way. It just doesn't happen that way.
So when you're working with an athlete, you're looking for that one specific thing? I believe it was the key log analogy that you gave us earlier that we're actually going to touch on in kind of part 2 of this show. So maybe dig into that a little bit and kind of tease the next episode.
So to explain, it was one of the principles that I love. When I was a kid, there was a documentary on National Geographic. I think it was in Canada, in the logging industry, where they were throwing on the logs in a river, and then the river would carry the log to the what do you call that in English? The factory that cuts it. Yeah,
like the mill.
Log cutting mill. Yeah,
the mill. The mill.
See a few mills up there in the Northwest, Doug?
Yeah,
that's right. I'm a logging country.
Yeah. And eventually, once in a while, you get a bottleneck, like where everything gets stuck. So you have 1,000 logs that are getting stuck and everything, and they're getting crushed, so they will lose money. And they bring that one engineer that would walk around and choose that one log to remove, knowing that once they remove that one log, everything else would go back to floating normally. And that I thought was magical. As a kid, I thought I didn't understand how the guy did it. It's actually engineering, but he would find that one log that kept everybody else from moving freely. I was like, that's the greatest thing ever. And as a coach, that's the greatest principle ever. Like, instead of fixing your athlete that has 26 problems, try to see where they all start, because usually they're connected. Connect the dots, find where it starts, fix that, and everything else will trickle down and fix all the little problems by themselves, instead of you pounding 26 different problems, because they're going to create a 27th anyway, and then a 36th, and then a 42nd.
Think of all the wasted effort when the coach is trying to explain what to do 26 times, and the athlete's trying to put 26 times the effort in everything, and eat to fuel that effort and recover from all that.
And by the way, you haven't found the key log, so you're you're going to keep doing it. So once you fax 26, there's 27th, and then 32nd, and then 42nd, and you're going to keep doing it because you haven't fixed the key lock. So the bottleneck keeps happening. So you can remove the log.
You burn yourself
as you
out.
go.
You shorten your career.
Yeah, you can remove the log as you want. There's more logs coming down that river.
Right.
So they're going to keep getting stuck. So how long can you do that for? By the way, none of the logs are going to the mill, so you're not making any money. Right. So sooner or later, you're going to have to close shop anyway.
So it's not really that you have 26 problems, that you have kind of like one problem and then 25 other symptoms of a problem.
Exactly. So experienced coaches have a tendency to spend too much time on the symptoms and not enough on the cause.
All right. We'll get into
That's what we're going to tell you about
part 2.
next time
that
around.
next week. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you then.
My pleasure. See you guys.
Join the conversation every week after the episode over at barbellshrug.com. This is also where you'll find new episodes of Barbell Shrugged, Technique Wad, Nuggets and Pearls, Barbell Business, Get Change, plus new articles every day on our daily blog, written by us, guests of the show, and some of the biggest names in strength and conditioning. So, go there and leave a comment now.
Oh my gosh, wow, that's so cool. Yay, that's so awesome.
Did you like this video? If so, subscribe to our channel and share this with your friends.
And if you want even more free, awesome resources to help you reach your fitness goals, plus some updates that we only share over email, head over to barbellshrug.com and sign up for the newsletter.